Let's do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. You get a special live stream today because the plan was to have government secrets this morning. And on days we do government secrets, we don't do the regular live stream Dangerous Ideas. But lucky for you, we had catastrophic tech issues for government secrets. And therefore, you get today's live stream. So, hope you appreciate the bonus episode that's kind of not a bonus episode because the other episode, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Point is, hello, welcome. I got a great show for you. I'm excited about it. Also performing live in New York City this coming Friday. If anyone's nearby, hope you'll come to that. leecamp.com/schedule. I got a lot of big stories for you, such as Israel arming ISIS. You know, it seems like it should get a little coverage, but no, why? Why would we? Why would we be talking about that? That and much more coming up on today's show. Might go a little shorter than an hour since this is a special bonus episode that I threw together. But I have a great guest. I've been using some of his reporting on this show because it is excellent. And so I wanted to have him on and talk about some of the writing, the journalism he's been doing. He goes by The Dissident on Substack. Please welcome Justin KP.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You've been doing excellent work.
Thank you.
And I wanted to cover some of these stories. You're coming to us from Canada, right?
Yeah, Ottawa.
Ottawa. I have performed in Ottawa several times because there was a Yuck Yucks there. At least there used to be.
Yeah, there still is.
Yeah,
I think.
I performed at the Yuck Yucks. You know, nothing gives you a lot of dignity and pride in your career like performing at things called Yuck Yucks or Chuckle Barrel or the Banana Bucket or whatever. The one in Baltimore here is called Magoobies. Yeah.
Magoobies.
Yeah, a lot of pride in that. Anyway. I want to get to some of these stories that you've been writing about, and many of these stories, it seems like you're one of the few writing about them, which is why I like your stuff.
Thank you.
So this is one of your most recent ones about Israel arming ISIS in order to continue their ethnic cleansing, their genocide in Gaza, but it's like they can do a little bit of it without it being like Israeli hands. They can kind of put it on another group.
Exactly.
Can you talk about what you found here?
Well, so this story goes back to the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, where Israel armed a group of former drug smugglers linked to ISIS, led by Yasser Abu Shabab. And the first thing they had this group do was loot aid coming in for Palestinians, which they did for multiple reasons. One, so they could say, oh, look, we're letting aid in while continuing the starvation. But also because basically it's like a false flag operation to falsely blame Hamas on the aid looting. And they did do that, and it was used to justify the establishment of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites, which were funded by the US and Israel and basically used as death traps to lure in desperate, starving Palestinians so the IDF, alongside this Abu Shabab gang, could open fire on them. And I mean, there's endless testimony on this from Anthony Aguilera, the whistleblower from the U.S. private mercenary firm UG Solutions, to even IDF militants admitting it in Haaretz. So then this gang was rebranded by Israel into the so-called popular forces, and they tried to present them as this like grassroots organized.
Just to clarify, the name of the thing is the Popular Forces.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So Israel basically rebranded this group of ISIS-linked drug smugglers into the Popular Forces to try to present them as a grassroots opposition to the Palestinian resistance. And they even planted false op-eds, which they supposedly were written by Yasser Abu Shabab in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, where it was just repeating Israeli propaganda, but trying to pass it off like it was from a Palestinian perspective. And so that's the background on the story, but I can get to the update.
Yeah. Let's get to what the Times of Israel said. And by the way, just to let people know, Times of Israel is a pro-Israel propaganda rag, but they're willing to admit, a lot of Israeli media is willing to admit certain things that the Western media won't admit.
Ynet, a super mainstream Israeli paper, just admitted that the Mossad was for years backing a force of rioters, which they activated during the January protests in Iran to basically make the case for a regime change war. So to go to your point, and also I was watching your show the other day, and you were talking about like the Hannibal Directive,
Mm.
how that's pretty much been blacklisted in all of Western media, but it's been talked about in Ynet and Haaretz and other Israeli news outlets.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting that despite these things, especially Times of Israel, Haaretz, some of the others, despite these things being propaganda for Israel largely, there's certain things they're willing to admit that Western media just will not touch with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, let's get to the update about Israel more recently arming these kind of ISIS splinter groups.
So yeah. So basically, Yasser Abu Shabab was killed, I think, late last year in sort of an internal coup, and he was replaced by Ghassan al-Duhani, the current leader of the so-called Popular Forces, who's similar. Now, this is going to get a little confusing, but he was basically part of a group called Jaish al-Islam, which is not the same group as the Jaish al-Islam in Syria that the Saudis backed.
Mm.
But he was also affiliated, according to an interview he gave, with the al-Nusra Front, the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, which was backed by the CIA to the tune of $1 billion a year under the Timber Sycamore program.
Mhm.
And so now he's currently the leader of the so-called Popular Forces, another former ISIS and Al-Qaeda affiliated militant. And reportedly, him and his affiliated groups are now using military drones, which even the Times of Israel acknowledges. I mean, they didn't outwardly say it, but they said, given Israel's history of backing, they're very likely coming directly from Israel. I mean, where else would they come from?
Right, because these type of military drones are not something that your average fighter would have, and so
It,
they've got to be
exactly.
they've got to be coming from some larger entity. And Israel has been known to back these ISIS offshoots in order to, like you said, just loot Gaza, destroy community, destroy the ability of Gazans to have a stable life. All of those things are useful for Israel.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I mean it goes back. I mean, there's a long history of both the US and Israel using Al Qaeda and ISIS for their interests, going back to the Mujahideen, where the US armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to try to trigger a Soviet invasion in what they called the Afghan trap. And then, including after the so called war on terror in Libya, where NATO backed pretty much entirely jihadist rebels based on the false claim that Gaddafi was going to do this massacre against civilians. And then the CIA used that same regime change operation to funnel Gaddafi's depleted weapon stockpile to similar groups in Syria for the next country that was on the clean break hit list, which is basically the US and Israel and often the UK's hit list of countries to reshape the Middle East that goes back to the Iraq War.
Yeah, remind people a little bit more what the clean break paper or analysis was.
Well, so the clean break basically goes back to 1996, and it was written by a group of then Benjamin Netanyahu advisors like David Wormser and Richard Pearl, and they basically said, well, instead of agreeing to any kind of two-state solution, destroy the Oslo Accords and take out any government in the region that's too sympathetic to either Palestinian or Lebanese resistance. Um, Starting with Iraq. This was adopted pretty soon after by groups like the Project for a New American Century, Bill Kristol and Robert Kagan, who basically saw the Greater Israel Project as a good way to project American power in the Middle East and have American dominance. And so you sort of have this alliance of the Israel lobby and the neoconservatives for different reasons, but ultimately being the Israel lobby wants Israel to be the dominant power in the Middle East, and the US wanting to use Israel to be the dominant power in the Middle East and wanting to be the dominant power in the world. And so the clean break after Iraq became a list of multiple countries that Wesley Clark, the former general, revealed 7 countries in 5 years. I mean, it took longer than that, but it was
It took longer, but they have gotten to all of them now. Yeah.
exactly. It was Iraq, then Libya, then Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and finally Iran. And so what we're seeing right now with the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran is pretty much the final phase of the clean break project, and that's why Israel's going into South Lebanon, taking more of Gaza, expanding settlements in the West Bank, because Iran is the last country left that really supports the Palestinian and Lebanese resistance. And so, from Israel and the US's perspective, taking out Iran would mean greater Israel.
Yeah, and we ended up with a kind of a theme on some of these articles of yours, which I like, that it kind of shows not just Israel, but the US and NATO aligning with these absolute horrific terrorists. One of your other recent articles is about NATO backing Al-Qaeda terrorists in Mali.
So this is a similar story where Mali basically kicked out French troops in 2022. And so now you have the NATO proxy government in Ukraine backing a group called Azawad, which is a separatist group which is working alongside JNIM, which is the Al Qaeda affiliate in Mali. And then you have a French outlet called RTL, which revealed, yeah, the Ukrainian government is getting full support from France on this, because they basically, similar to Syria and Ukraine, they want to use this as a proxy war between the West and Russia, where you have the current government, which came to power in a coup in, I believe, 2020, but is very popular in Mali. They kicked out the French troops and basically hired the Russian militia Wagner group to fight Al Qaeda instead. And so you basically have France wanting to gain their foothold back in Mali, and also Ukraine and NATO wanting to fight yet another proxy war with Russia. And so you have them covertly backing the Ukrainian government in backing a group working right alongside the Al Qaeda affiliate, which France claimed they were there to fight in the first place when they did have troops in Mali.
So right now they're going off the technique of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So they basically just want to fund and arm anything that'll create chaos for the Mali government.
Exactly. And I mean, you see this so often in all of these proxy wars, from al-Nusra in Syria to the Azov battalion in Ukraine to these Al-Qaeda militants everywhere. The US, the UK, and Israel, they're really willing to fund and whitewash any group, no matter how extreme, if they're going to do their fighting for them.
Yeah, and here's the last one on our theme of U.S., Israel, and NATO supporting, arming, funding in various ways the horrific factions around the world, terrorist factions, etc. This is Ukraine holding a state funeral for a Nazi.
Yeah.
And this, I'll let you talk about it, but just to remind everyone, there's been well evidenced, if that's a term, claims of Ukraine being linked with Nazis. The neo-Nazis are very powerful in Ukraine. They support Nazi sympathizers, the Banderites. And yeah, so when Russia says they're fighting Nazis, there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, and it goes back, I mean, it's similar to everything we're talking about, because going back to the coup against Viktor Yanukovych in 2014, you had the US backing far-right groups like Right Sector and the Svoboda Party, which actually basically Right Sector in the Maidan Square started firing at protesters falsely blamed it on Yanukovych, and this was what was used to justify backing the coup, which basically brought these forces to power. And it's not like the U.S. would ideologically agree with them, but they're useful to their agenda. So, when Zelensky got in, when he was a totally different guy back in 2019, he wanted to implement the Minsk Accords, which basically would have ended the war that was going on in eastern Ukraine between these far right forces and pro Russia separatists. But these forces effectively threatened him against implementing the Minsk Accords,
because
and
they knew the Minsk Accords would end their chance for a proxy war.
exactly. And so the U.S. supported them in that, because the whole point of bringing these forces to power in Ukraine was very similar to what I was talking about with the Afghan trap, to try to draw Russia in and use it as a proxy war to weaken Russia from the U.S. and UK and NATO empire.
Yeah. So what exactly was this state funeral?
So this was for a collaborator with the OUN, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, which was a Nazi collaborating group during World War II. And I'm blanking on the figure's name right now. It's in the article.
I don't know if I can pronounce it right. Andrei Melnik.
Right. So, and there's like documents dating back to World War II where he says, and you'll see them in the article, where he says, um, essentially, like, we're completely agreeing with the Nazi agenda, and we're willing to implement the Nazi policy in Ukraine with the Holocaust. And this guy is now being honored as a state hero, and the militia that's at the state funeral is the Azov Battalion, this far right paramilitary group, which the U.S. actually banned sending weapons to in 2018 after a amendment from Ro Khanna, but then it was reversed by the Biden administration
Right.
in 2024 after they ran a.
They undid it, which I love that, because that's an admission of, like, you know what? We actually do want to send weapons to Nazis.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I mean, there was a whole whitewashing campaign after the proxy war started where, I mean, the example I'm thinking of is the New York Times formerly called the Azov Battalion correctly neo-Nazi. And then during the proxy war, they called it the celebrated Azov Battalion.
Yeah, there's this whole brand washing where all of a sudden the Azov Battalion was the good guys, and it's like, a few years ago you were writing about how they were Nazis. What happened to that?
Exactly. No, it's wild how narratives just shift, and like things that are well known just become memory hold.
Yeah, and then people act like it never happened. Another article, which I did cover this somewhat on my show a few episodes ago, but is Hebrew language media admitting or boasting about the amount of power that AIPAC and the Israel lobby has over Congress. So this is essentially, I mean, these are on the cusp of being Israeli state media outlets, and they're not just admitting to it, but bragging about, like, we control the U.S. government.
This was another brutally honest article in Ynet where they basically said, yes, it was these Israel lobby groups that were behind both the primary campaign against Thomas Massie on the Republican side, but also Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman on the Democratic side, and basically bragging like, yeah, we want to reshape both sides of the political aisle so there's no Israel critics. And it was the Israel lobby at the behest of the government of Israel that was behind this. And so just a little more on the Thomas Massie primary, which I've covered recently. The primary donors to MAGA Kentucky, this group that was promoting the primary against him,
which Massie has said is neither MAGA nor Kentucky.
Exactly, were Miriam Adelson, Trump's biggest pro-Israel donor, who he's bragged effectively wrote half of his Middle East policy,
and she was born in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Another one is Paul Singer, who is not as well known, but should be more well known because he's not only one of the primary funders of AIPAC, but he's a primary funder for so many different neoconservative think tanks that push for these policies we're criticizing, including stuff like the now defunct Foreign Policy Initiative, which basically was a rebranded version of the Project for a New American Century, which originated a lot of this sort of new Cold War with Russia stuff that led to everything we're talking about. And not only that, but virtually every think tank that tried to undermine the JCPOA and has been pushing for war with Iran, Paul Singer has funded. And so this is, I mean, aside from, I mean, there was direct funding from AIPAC and then also the Christians United for Israel, which is the Christian Zionist cult, which basically wants a war with Iran because they think it's going to bring about Armageddon. Psychotic, but very
Yeah,
influential in the Republican Party.
well, it is interesting because you have Orthodox. There's a certain sect or groups of Orthodox Jews that believe that it'll bring about the the kind of end times war that they want in order to achieve greater Israel. And then you have the evangelicals who support the state of Israel because they believe that all the Jews need to be in Israel in order for the end times to come and then the Jews to burn in hell. So you have these two groups that one could argue should not really like each other, both very excited about bringing about the end times.
Exactly. It's such a weird alliance because, as you say, it's for completely different but equally psychotic reasons, but they have the same goal.
Yeah, and then to give some of the numbers from your article, well, you're quoting Ynet, I think. Since the 2022 midterm elections, AIPAC has spent more than $221 million in Democratic primaries. The organization, and this is just AIPAC, this isn't even all of the Israel lobby. The organization sometimes hides behind obscure groups with different names, realizing that AIPAC's brand has become toxic in some quarters. In recent New York Times, so this is I wanted to throw the good news in here. In a recent New York Times poll found that 57% of Democrats support the Palestinians compared to just 17% supporting Israel now. According to the poll, nearly 75% of Democrats oppose military aid to Israel, up from 45% just 3 years ago. Nearly half of Democratic Party supporters said the party supports Israel too much.
Yeah, and I mean, you see major shifts in America, especially with people under 30, including you, me and you both covered this story, but you have nearly half of Jewish Americans under 30 supporting a single state with equal rights. And the majority of Democrats sympathizing with Palestine, the majority of Americans sympathizing with Palestine, and with Republicans, it's similar where it's the over 60 crowd, it's the boomer crowd where they're completely brainwashed by the pro-Israel propaganda. But even with younger Republicans, they're starting to turn against Israel. And so, I mean, this is what Israel's freaking out about because it's essentially a U.S. military base. It couldn't do anything it does without U.S. backing. And so this is why you have Israel pushing so much propaganda and the Israel lobby going into overdrive to stop either progressives or libertarians, progressives on the Democratic side or libertarians on the Republican side, who may threaten the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Yeah, and it's also why Israel is so terrified of BDS because the economics of Israel are not very are not very good or very stable. So you cut off a few powerful corporations, and all of a sudden Israel is struggling immensely.
That's why Francesca Albanese got sanctioned by the Trump administration after she wrote a report called Economy of Genocide, which basically named every military contractor, tech firm, and company that was profiting off the genocide in Gaza.
And to shift gears to one more story, I know we're not going to be able to cover all of it because it is an in-depth article that I recommend people check out. But you wrote about the entire political history of Tulsi Gabbard recently when she resigned, which some of it, I remember quite well. Some of it I had totally forgotten about. But her and most people know that she's had these like complete changes, but I had forgotten just how thoroughly, like prior to even supporting Bernie Sanders, she was essentially a neocon. Then she does her big Bernie Sanders anti-war switch. Then she does a complete 180 again, back to a Trump figurehead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's a strange character. I wasn't writing back when she ran for president. I remember just her talking about stuff like the U.S. backing the genocide in Yemen and the U.S. dirty war in Syria. And I just seeing that, I was like, okay, she's pretty good. But looking into it, yeah, she basically started off as this like establishment neocon Democrat who taking pictures with Shmuley Botia, however you pronounce his name, and
Yeah. Rabbi Shmuley is perhaps the most famous, like pro-Israel rabbi who somehow has made it his job in life to become friends with all these celebrities. So like, with basically every celebrity that just says insane false shit supporting Israel, they have photos with Rabbi Shmuley. People like RFK Jr., people like Roseanne
yeah,
Barr, just like Rabbi Shmuley's always there somehow.
but and I mean she was opposed to the Iran deal. I mean she eventually voted for it, but she was repeating CIA
That's
talking points.
The Obama Iran deal.
She was repeating CIA talking points about Iran. Then in 2016, when she resigned as DNC vice chair, she flipped. And as I said, she started calling out stuff like the US war in Yemen, the sanctions and the coup on Venezuela, the dirty war in Syria. And
Yeah,
she was like a,
and you found some of her old tweets. Like she tweeted to Donald Trump, "Hey Donald Trump, being Saudi Arabia's bitch is not America first."
yeah. And she said it's all about the oil in Venezuela. And she even sold no war with Iran t shirts.
Yeah, let's see. Here's a photo of that T-shirt. No War with Iran T-shirts that she made money off of for her campaign, and then she does a complete 180 again and goes back to being the pro-war MAGA Trumpster
Well, so
that we know and love.
So then she even had two flips since that. So she sort of rebranded to this sort of like anti-establishment conservative, I guess, where she started becoming very culturally conservative, but still criticized like the Ukraine proxy war. But then when the Gaza genocide started, she just became a full neocon. She fully supported it. And then, of course, as Trump's director of national intelligence, she oversaw the kidnapping of Maduro, the repeated bombing of Yemen, war with Iran. I mean, basically everything she called out, when she was or pretended to oppose when she ran for president.
Yeah, and she either would support these things that Trump was doing or be completely silent on them. Uh, but I also covered whatever it was 2 days ago how essentially the role of the national intelligence director has become non-existent. It was created after 9/11 to supposedly coordinate all of the intelligence agencies, but of course the CIA and the military intelligence and the FBI, they don't want someone above them. So
Exactly.
instead they defanged anything that could have any power. And now, I mean, before she resigned, she was basically overseeing internal American intelligence, which is not really how intelligence is supposed to work. But she became like a domestic intelligence chief. Her job was basically just to rubber stamp whatever Trump said.
Exactly. Um, and even when Joe Kent, one of her top employees, resigned over the Iran war, she stayed silent and even supported Trump over Joe Kent, even though it was her report in March of 2025 that debunked the major deception behind the US war in Iran, where it said correctly Iran has decided, or Ali Khamenei, has decided not to authorize an Iranian nuclear weapon. And he never would have because his predecessor, Ayatollah Khomeini, put a fatwa against nuclear weapons during the Iran-Iraq war, where the CIA was actually backing Saddam Hussein against Iran. And this was continued by Khomeini. And so this is what the DNI report that Tulsi Gabbard put out said, was that we continue to assess that even though there's pressure from the IRCG, Ali Khamenei continues to oppose an Iranian nuclear weapon. And when Trump was asked about this, he just said, "Oh, she's wrong," and then she pretty much shut up about it and just went along with what Trump was saying.
Yeah, I've heard various reports that Khomeini was opposed to nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction in general. It went against their religion, and it seems like so. So in many ways, it seems that the U.S. and Israel have actually pushed Iran closer to a nuclear weapon because now there are at least probably some people in power that support getting a nuclear weapon as a way of defending themselves. But yeah, it's all just such a shit show with Iran. The U.S. has really stepped in it for this one, but this is what a collapsing empire vomits up.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna shift to you being in Canada and say, do you think much about Trump basically acting like he's going to take over the entire hemisphere and he's going to steal Greenland? And I'm waiting for him to. He has mentioned Canada being the 51st state a couple of times, but has seemed too busy with his other chaos to really focus on it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm feeling like he's probably going to be too busy with, as you say, the other chaos. But honestly, like at first, I was like, no, there's no way he would, and now I'm like, I wouldn't put anything past this administration. Like, I mean, I think as you say, like this sort of Don Roe doctrine, and they're certainly trying to overthrow any government in South America, including Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, where Trump and Israel actually and Malay basically through I'm blanking on his name right now, Juan Orlando Hernandez, and there have been leaks in the Honduran media which basically show that they're planning to get rid of any government that's even left of center in South America, including Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico and Gustavo Petro in Colombia. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it's like, would Trump throw Canada into the Don Roe doctrine if we're like not 100% going along with everything he wants? Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's quite possible. And of course, the U.S. has been doing that for years with Latin America.
Exactly.
Either collapsing countries, putting in puppet governments. Our tool bag is large for just making sure these countries don't move towards the left, even kind of subtly. I mean, there's a lot of people who say Lula da Silva is not really a leftist. He's just a left of center. Has some socialist tendencies, etc. But that's enough for the U.S. to have already put him in prison. I mean, we created the lawfare that put him in prison once, and now we're trying to find another way to get him out of power.
No, it's a great example. I mean, I'm not really an expert in Brazilian politics, but from what I've heard, he's not like a Maduro or an Ortega. Like he's sort of like he's not like a full-on socialist. He's more of like a center-left kind of guy that I think probably the harder left has some criticisms of for, being too establishment. But as you say, he's still, especially under the Trump administration, he's still seen as an enemy that has to be removed and replaced with a Javier Milei type figure.
Yeah, just a pure lunatic. We need to find a pure lunatic to put in power. I don't want to use up more of your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show. You go by The Dissident on Substack. I hope everybody will check out your stuff there. I guess it's substack.com/@the307.
Yeah, just put the307.substack.com.
Yeah, so the for those trying to type that in, the 307 is all numbers, not written out.
Yes.
I will put that in the chat as well, and really
Awesome.
appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you writing, and I'll have to have you on again soon.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a great time. I've been a fan for a long time, so it was really, really an honor to be on.
Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. There is Justin, the Dissident, over at Substack, always doing great work. And so it's good to talk to him. For those of you joining late, this is a bit of a surprise live stream because we didn't have government secrets today. But so it might not be a full hour, but it'll be close. But I wanted to get to a couple more stories here. And before I do that, I wanted to get to 60 Minutes. CBS News just completely collapsing. So get into that in a second. But before I do that, I would love for all of you to join my Substack at reallycamp.substack.com. You can join for free, which there's zero reason not to do that. I mean, I like, honestly, if you have a reason, then write it on a piece of paper and you burn that piece of paper because it's not a real reason, okay? There's no reason that piece of paper needs to exist. Reallycamp.substack.com. And I would also love if you want to go a step further, if you wanna step further for the show, support the show, you can join up for the cost of one beer a month, which is effectively 33 cents a column / episode. You'll notice that I am not flooded with the awesome corporate sponsor offers that get all these other, talking heads, billions of dollars. So I basically scrape by you guys throwing me the cost of a beer a month. That's how I'm able to keep this show going. Thank you, VC Nick, for throwing in a super chat. Really appreciate it. And VC Nick says, let's talk about ice going quiet for the World Cup. Yes, I can do more ice stories coming up in future episodes. But yeah, I'd love you guys to join up on either Substack or patreon.com/LeeCamp or LeeCamp.net. Those are the three places. Also, live show coming up this Friday, New York City, Brooklyn to be specific. June 5th, Friday, with John F. O'Donnell and Naomi Caravani from Redacted Tonight. It'll be a whole Redacted Tonight show there. Live stand-up comedy event. It's going to be a great time. It'll be all new material that I didn't do in my last one. If you're in New York and you came to the one in December, you're not going to hear the same jokes, the same stories, etc. So, hope you'll come on out. Totally affordable, fun. Have a beer with us after. Why not? LeeCamp.com/schedule is where the tickets and details are there. But all right. Yeah. Not true flags in the comments says perhaps more of a bit Mr. Beast approach would better pay the bills. Yes, if I just had literal train crashes. I mean, the couple of Mr. Beast episodes I've seen, it never ceased to amaze me the amount of waste, both money waste and just like environmental waste. In a 10-minute episode, they'll run a train. They'll buy a train, then run it at full speed into like a Boeing 747 that they also bought. And then they'll just take 1,000 doves and put those on another train that goes off a cliff. I'm exaggerating, but very slightly. I don't think they kill 1,000 doves, but they will it's just crazy shit. The environmental destruction that goes on in a Mr. Beast episode is unfathomable. For those, someone saying Mr. Who. Mr. Beast, I don't know why I'm stopping to give you this explanation, is the largest YouTuber in the world. Each episode gets 200 to 400 million views. A big show that you go, oh, wow, that's a big show, would get 1 million views a video. He's getting 200 to 400 million. He's the largest thing. Each episode is viewed the same amount as the Super Bowl. It's fucking nuts. But part of the reason is that it is vapid nonsense. It is we decided to take this swimming pool and fill it with dead pigeons and then light it on fire. And then Mr. Beast is going to be shot out of a cannon and he's going to see if he can live in the fiery, burning, dead penguins for a week. It'll be something like that. But anyway. Yeah, for some odd reason, that type of, I feel like that's not quite my show. It seems slightly off from what I do. Okay, so let's get to the further meltdown of 60 Minutes. And this is one of these things where I'm going to bring you the story that everyone's talking about, but I'm also going to bring you not the other side, the deeper side of the story, which is that 60 Minutes, although they did good reporting, if it was something that was completely and utterly not linked to American hegemony, 60 Minutes, so for those outside of the U.S., 60 Minutes is one of the most renowned, best U.S. news shows that has ever existed. Oh, 60 Minutes. It's the grand flagship of CBS News. But every episode, I mean, I'd be shocked if you could find an episode that doesn't have some sort of either propaganda, U.S. empire agenda, U.S. war machine agenda. There's always something. There's always something in there that is manufacturing consent for our just gut-wrenching, disgusting, morally bankrupt wars and obliteration of the world. That was when it was liberal. Now it's been bought out by Ellison, Skydance, Paramount. They're all the same thing. And they put in Barry Weiss. You guys heard me cover this at the time. Barry Weiss, Zionist, lunatic, loves genocide, literally had a renowned Palestinian Gazan academic. She got him killed because she went after him on Twitter, and he legit tweeted out, "If I'm assassinated, it'll be thanks to Barry Weiss." And he was then assassinated by Israel. So she is legit, like, doesn't just broadly have blood on her hands. She has like individual blood on her hands. And she's now running CBS News. So she's fired anyone who had any kind of shred of journalistic integrity. And one of their main, hosts, Scott Peely, or is it Pelly or Peely, has just resigned. And, he talks about how wonderful 60 Minutes is. What manufacturing consent for war? I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, he is resigning because it's gotten worse. Like, it's always been a pro-U.S. war machine, that kind of garbage. But now it's like pro-Israel crazy falsehood garbage. Anyway, 60 Minutes. This is from his statement. Last month, 60 Minutes lost its DNA when our entire senior leadership and two of our best on-air correspondents were cruelly fired without cause. Good people were silenced because they stood up for our audience. They stood for fairness against the forces of political bias, as if 60 Minutes wasn't a pro-imperial bias to begin with. But so that's the thing. You kind of got to see both sides. Not both sides. You got to see deeper into this. Like, in his mind, he thinks CBS was unbiased, even though it was manufacturing consent for U.S. wars for generations. I'm sure, I don't have the stories in front of me, but I guarantee you CBS did plenty of WMD in Iraq stories before we'd invaded Iraq. I guarantee you they did plenty of Assad chemical weapons hoax stories. I'd seen plenty of them doing the Russiagate, supporting the Russiagate hoax, which got endless number of journalists just had their careers destroyed. I mean, I guess in a way I'm in that bucket as well, because who knows if all my shit would have been blown up if it hadn't been for the Russiagate hoax. So that's all 60 Minutes. But somehow it's gotten worse because now it's even more pro-Israel than it used to be. Scott Pelly says, for my part, new management has instructed me to inject falsehoods and bias into a politically sensitive story. I've been told to include assertions that are unverified. To date, in every case, I have managed to ignore these instructions or refuse them. Sorry, I maybe I should just be attacking Barry Weiss in this, but I can't help but notice all of the bullshit he's 60 Minutes has also been involved in over the years. He says, I've been told to include assertions that are unverified. Oh, you mean like all of Russiagate that is all collapsed? You mean like all of the Syria chemical hoax? You mean like those kind of assertions? You mean like all of the pro-Israel garbage that was spit out by every mainstream network until some equivocations started like being spoken after October 7th? In his mind, 60 Minutes was this wonderful, unbiased news network until the Zionist lunatic Barry Weiss took over. Of course, she has made it worse. She has legit fired anyone who won't lie for Trump. To date, in every case, I have managed to ignore those instructions or refuse them. Recently, politicians have been invited to choose correspondents for interviews on the broadcasts, giving politicians control over 60 Minutes. As if 60 Minutes wasn't glazing all these politicians for years. I mean, as if 60 Minutes was really going hard at Biden and Kamala Harris and all these absolute war criminals, provable war criminals. Finally, incompetence and unprofessionalism is the new management have wreaked havoc at 60 Minutes. In a case involving one of my stories, the entire program came within 19 minutes of not getting on air at all. At 60 Minutes, we have fought harder than anyone knows to save the program that became an American icon, he says. Anyway, he says, I depart after 37 years at CBS with one emotion, a heart brimming with gratitude for the men and women of CBS News who encouraged and enriched my work. very often at the risk of their own lives. Yes, facilitating U.S. empire can be very risky to your health. It really does suck. Anyway, you get the point. He both has an accurate point about Barry Weiss and CBS News gutting any remainder of I don't know, legit journalism, any remainder of actual unbiased work, if there was any. But he, of course, is ignoring the fact that 60 Minutes has been one of the main propaganda tools for the U.S. empire, for the U.S. global war on terror that's killed 60 million people. Like 60 Minutes has been really important for that. So, thank you, Arcane Eclectic, for supporting the show. Says, would you consider doing a deep dive sometime into the rabbit hole that is the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin? Thanks. Oh, that'd be an interesting segment for sure. The assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. Supposedly, I guess the widely viewed version of events is that he was killed by a pro-Israel crackpot who didn't think he was was afraid that that Rabin was going to facilitate a two-state solution, basically, and killed him to stop that from happening. But it sounds very much like it could be an Oswald situation, but I don't know a lot about it, to be honest. Okay, let's see. Do I have anything else? Oh, here is so apparently there is actually genuinely a rift between Trump and Netanyahu, because Netanyahu keeps going to war with Lebanon while Trump wants that to end because he wants to actually get the Iran deal. Like, he wants to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He feels his re-election, or the midterm elections depend on it. And meanwhile, Israel just keeps going to war with Lebanon because Israel doesn't want the war with Iran to end. So, but anyway, so Axios is reporting that Trump had this phone call where he said to Netanyahu, "Are you fucking crazy? What the fuck are you doing? I helped get you out of jail, or keep you out of jail." And anyway, here's Trump saying that, yes, that was indeed the phone call with Netanyahu.
Today.
Now, Axios reported that you had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in which you were angry with him. You said, "Are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail." Is that true? Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, "Bibi, we got to stop this. We got to stop it."
So there is Trump admitting to asking Netanyahu if he's fucking crazy. Now, this doesn't mean Israel doesn't have loads of power over the U.S., but as I've often said, Israel has a lot of power. Also, Israel is essentially a vassal state to the United States. I mean, Israel wouldn't exist without the U.S. war machine. So, no, I don't believe Israel is making all the decisions. However, is Israel continuing their war with Lebanon, even as it ruins the ceasefire or whatever semblance of a ceasefire the U.S. had with Iran? Yeah, of course, because Israel wants to be at war with Lebanon. They want to genocide South Lebanon and steal the land. They want to steal the water. They want to continue the war with Iran. Many of them view it as like this epic war to end all wars that will then create greater Israel. And so, yeah, they want all that. Even if like, I know it's easy to look at it and go, isn't this like basically destroying Israel's chance of remaining as an apartheid ethno state? And it's like, yeah, it seems that way, but also these people are lunatics and they think they're fighting for the Lord. Who's Lord? I don't know. So I want to do real quick. I got to wrap up here in a second, but I have promised to bring you guys more solutions to problems. And some of them are small, some of them are large, some of them are just like, look at this new kind of wind turbine that's awesome. And so I've been doing that. I've been bringing you a solution on almost every episode. And you know, I think it's kind of like we need to be using all these. We need to be using these little tiny ones here, and we need to be using fucking massive ones here. And like, so this is not, when I present one of these solutions, it doesn't mean like, hey, look, guys, the penguins are coming back on this one island, so that fixes everything. No, I get it. It doesn't fix everything, but okay. So I'm opposed to these data centers. These data centers are catastrophic in so many ways. But if you also know that these governments around the world are going to make these data centers, whether we like it or not, it turns out there is a way to make data centers that would use far less fresh water. Because I don't even know the numbers, but these data centers just suck up all the fresh waters, which many of these areas are in drought. I mean, they're building data centers in California, one of the most drought-ridden states we got. So, yeah, it's just crazy freshwater use. But, of course, China is doing something a little different because, of course, they're building these data centers too because they're also in the AI race. China has achieved what it calls the world's first fully operational, commercially running underwater AI data center off the coast of Shanghai. The facility features nearly 2,000 servers housed in sealed submarine-grade capsules submerged in the ocean. There's a photo of what this looks like. And now, I don't know about the harm to the ocean. For all I know, it could be very bad for the ocean to have these things in there. So I don't want to just say, yeah, we should do this and the data centers rock. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it seems like this solution compared to sucking up all of the fresh water on Earth seems to be slightly better. Also, China seems to always be way ahead of us in things that make more sense. By leveraging the natural cooling power of seawater, it dramatically reduces energy demands, cutting cooling costs by up to 90% compared to traditional land-based data centers. The entire system is powered by nearby offshore wind farms. The $226 million project, which, by the way, is nothing for a company like fucking SpaceX or whatever, or OpenAI, $226 million project was officially launched. It must have been launched, boy, in the U.S. to achieve something like that, it must have been launched years ago. It must have been launched in 2010 to do something like that. China launched it in June 2025, exactly a year ago. China is able to achieve things just at, like, we're still trying to make a bullet train, right? Well, any day now there's going to be a bullet train in the U.S. Thank you, VC Nick, for supporting the show. VC Nick says eating animals and animal products is 15 times more harmful to the environment than data centers, including water waste. Good point. I did not know the numbers, if 15 times is the accurate number, but I will sometimes talk about the catastrophic environmental harm of animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is the number one cause of climate crisis, the number one cause of climate change, and it's basically never mentioned. I didn't know in comparison data centers, but I did know that, like, when there's a drought in LA or California, sometimes they'll put up big billboards and announce things about, hey, everybody, only flush your toilet once a day, or share showers. If you live with someone, do a shower with the other person. I'm assuming they mean like married people, not like just you and your roommate who are not sexually involved, just showering together all the time. I mean, listen, if you want to, go for it. But it's so funny that they'll do those billboards and those announcements, considering one hamburger is the amount of fresh water that it takes to shower for a month. One hamburger, like the amount of fresh water used to create a single hamburger is you showering for a month. So it's all bullshit, but it's bullshit that's designed to avoid criticizing animal agriculture, because they're never going to do that. The big ag is too powerful. Big ag pays for all the ads. All the ads are for hamburgers and other ag products. So they never criticize big ag, and yet animal agriculture, number one cause of climate crisis. Yeah. I mean, at least there is criticism of the data centers. At least we're getting to that point that people are actually criticizing these things. Okay. I'm going to wrap up the show 6 minutes early, although this is kind of a bonus episode. But I got to run, and I will see all you guys at the New York show on Friday. Hope you'll be there, if at all possible. Friday, there should still be a live stream if I can do it from my hotel room. It should still be a live stream Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, live show. Go to leecamp.com/schedule if you want to join us in New York City this Friday. All right, I will see you Friday for a live stream, assuming the hotel's internet works. And keep fighting.